Xiaomi hasn't been having the best time in China's smartphone market over the last few years, but let's wind back the clock a little bit. Lei Jun's startup went from relatively unknown to outselling Apple over a period of just a couple of years. So how did they do that? Well, first, Xiaomi built up a small group of loyal fans by offering its software for free, the MIUI Android operating system. They updated it every single week and they were really responsive to user requests, which helped them earn a very loyal following. Now, the plan was always to move on to smartphones and other smart gadgets, but Xiaomi knew that it was never going to beat Apple, which was then the top smartphone seller in China, at its own game. So instead, Xiaomi took a different path. To capitalize on China's patriotic sentiment, Xiaomi played on nostalgic visuals in its marketing. For example, its mascot wore a hat with a red star very similar to the hats worn by communist rebels. And it wore a red scarf against a white background, which was very evocative of China's Communist Youth League. It's a really clever trick because without actually saying anything, Xiaomi had associated its brand with youth, with China, and with an underdog band of idealistic rebels, the communists, who were destined to win out in the end. So by the time it announced its first smartphone in 2011, Xiaomi had already built up some buzz. But it kicked things up to the next level with some possibly unintentional attention-grabbing moves. First, there was the magazine interview where Lei Jun was quoted as saying that everyone in the tech industry was just waiting for Steve Jobs to kick the bucket, and where he was photographed in front of a bunch of printed out photos of Steve Jobs. The company later said that he was misquoted. And then there was the time after Jobs' death when Xiaomi's official company Weibo account tweeted out, "I did." The company said that that was just an employee who made a mistake. Whether these were intentional or not, they helped make Xiaomi a part of China's smartphone conversation at a time when the company had barely launched its first phone. The masterstroke, though, might have been the way that Xiaomi chose to release that phone. Recognizing that it had a core group of loyal fans who skewed young and tech-savvy, Xiaomi decided to launch the phone only through its own website, in a series of limited flash sales. Limiting the number of phones available in each sale meant that stock was incredibly low and Xiaomi could sell out very quickly. Each time a sale sold out, that created headlines. Xiaomi sells out in 15 minutes, and that generated more buzz. It also stoked the fear of missing out. People were hearing about this phone that was selling like hotcakes and wondering what it was and why other people wanted it. So every time there was a flash sale, there were more phones available, but there were also more people interested in buying the phones, which allowed it to sell out again. Eventually, even the international press began to take notice, and Xiaomi's rocket to the top had achieved liftoff. So what can we learn from Xiaomi's success? First, turn your weaknesses into strengths. Xiaomi knew that it couldn't compete with Apple's global brand cachet, so instead it capitalized on hometown pride. And Xiaomi knew that it couldn't compete with Apple's manufacturing in terms of numbers, or with its distribution in terms of having its phone available in every mall. Instead, it turned its limited numbers and its single sales platform into a valuable strength: exclusivity. Now, of course, all that only worked because Xiaomi's first phone was actually really good. So maybe the real lesson here is that if you make a good product, success is fairly likely to follow. I'm Charlie Custer, and this has been Great Moments in Asia Tech.